My husband's secret double life. I found out in the worst way. I used to believe that secrets were small things, harmless omissions or white lies that smoothed over the rough edges of life. That belief shattered the night I found out who my husband really was. It was a Thursday evening, and I was driving home from work when I got the call. A number I didn't recognize lit up my screen, and against my better judgment, I answered. "Mrs. Calloway?" a man's voice asked. "Yes?" "This is Detective Reese. I need you to come down to the station. It's about your husband." I felt my heart seize in my chest. Is he okay?" A pause. "It's best if we talk in person." The drive to the police station was a blur. I parked hastily, my hands shaking as I rushed inside. The detective led me to a small, dimly lit room. On the table was a folder. My husband's name, Ethan Calloway, was stamped on the cover in bold letters. Detective Reese sat across from me, his expression unreadable. "Mrs. Calloway, do you know where your husband was last night?" I frowned. "At work. He's been staying late all week." Reese sighed and slid the folder toward me. "That's not true." I opened it with trembling hands. The first thing I saw was a photograph, a grainy surveillance still of a man in a suit. He had his arm around a woman, leaning in close to whisper something in her ear. I felt a cold wave wash over me. It was Ethan. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The detective hesitated. "That's not just another woman, Mrs. Calloway. That's Emily Reyes, and she's not his mistress." I shook my head in confusion. "Then who is she?" Reese exhaled sharply. "She's his wife." The room spun. Number that's impossible. But the next thing he showed me made it undeniable. A marriage certificate, a house deed in her name with his signature, photos of them together, looking every bit like a happy couple. "How long?" I managed to croak. "6 years," Reese said. "Around the same time you got married." Tears burned in my eyes. My whole marriage had been a lie. But it wasn't just infidelity. There was something darker beneath it. "Why are you showing me this? What does the police have to do with it?" Reese's expression hardened. "Because Emily Reyes was found dead last night, and your husband is missing." My breath caught in my throat. "No," I whispered. "We have reason to believe he's running. And Mrs. Calloway—" The detective leaned forward, his voice turning urgent. "We need to know, has Ethan ever lied about anything else? Money? Travel? Anything that seemed off?" My mind raced through every moment of our life together. The business trips, the sudden changes in our finances, the strange phone calls late at night. Had I ignored all the warning signs? A chill ran through me. If Ethan had been lying about an entire marriage, what else had he been hiding? And the worst part? I didn't know if I wanted to find out. The air in the interrogation room felt thick, like I was drowning in it. My hands were ice cold, my breath coming in short gasps. My husband, the man I had shared my life with for 6 years, was missing. And his other wife was dead. I don't know," I stammered. He was secretive sometimes, but I thought it was just work stress. Detective Reese watched me carefully. "What does Ethan do for work?" "He's a financial consultant," I said automatically. But as soon as the words left my mouth, doubt slithered in. Was he really? Reese's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's what he told you. But according to our records, Ethan Calloway doesn't exist." My stomach lurched. "What?" "There's no record of him before 7 years ago. No childhood, no past jobs, no family. The social security number he uses? It's fake." My mind reeled. Who the hell had I married? I struggled to breathe. "So you're saying he's not even a real person?" "Oh, he's real," Reese said grimly. "But the identity you know is fabricated. And now Emily Reyes is dead." He leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Are you sure you don't know where he could be?" I shook my head, numb. The truth was, I didn't even know where to begin looking for him. The Ethan I knew, the one who held my hand when my mother passed, who made me laugh with his terrible jokes, was a mirage. I need to go home, I whispered, barely holding myself together. Reese hesitated, but finally nodded. We'll be in touch. If you hear from him, call us immediately. The drive home was surreal. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. The traffic lights, the radio hum, even my own reflection in the rearview mirror. It all felt distant, like I was watching my life unravel from outside my body. When I stepped inside our house, an eerie silence greeted me. The same house we had picked out together, filled with our shared memories. But now, I didn't know who had really lived here. I moved like a ghost through the living room, my fingers trailing over the framed photos of us. How many of these moments had been real? How many had been manufactured? And then I noticed something. The drawer by his desk. It was slightly open. A chill ran through me. Ethan was meticulous. He never left things out of place. My pulse pounded as I stepped closer and pulled it open. Inside, I found a small black notebook. I flipped it open. Names, dates, locations, and then on the very last page, scrawled hastily in Ethan's familiar handwriting, "If anything happens, find Marcus. He'll explain everything." A phone number was scribbled beneath it. My heart pounded. Ethan had left me a clue. But did I really want to follow it? I barely had time to process before my phone vibrated. A blocked number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" Silence. Then a low voice. "You need to leave the house. Now." My blood ran cold. "Who is this?" A sharp breath. "There isn't time. They're coming for you." Click. The line went dead. And then a soft creak from upstairs. I wasn't alone. A slow, deliberate creak came from the upstairs hallway. I froze. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. Someone was in the house. The air shifted, heavy with something unseen but deeply, viscerally wrong. I didn't move. I couldn't. But then the stairs groaned, the unmistakable sound of a footstep. The instinct screamed in my head, but I couldn't even think where to go. My keys were still in my purse, the front door locked behind me. If I made a dash for it, would I even reach it in time? Then another step. Closer. I backed up slowly, silently, gripping my phone in my clammy hands. My only weapon was the small lamp on the end table. I grabbed it, my breath shallow. Another step. And then a voice. "Olivia." I nearly dropped the lamp. My blood turned to ice. I knew that voice. I turned my head just as he stepped into view at the top of the stairs. Ethan. But it wasn't the man I knew. His usually neat brown hair was disheveled, his face shadowed with exhaustion, his shirt wrinkled and streaked with something dark. He looked like a ghost, like a man on the run. "Ethan?" I breathed. His eyes locked onto mine. He looked almost relieved. "You have to come with me," he said. "Now." I clutched the lamp tighter. "Number, the police are looking for you. Your wife is dead." Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe regret. "I know," he said. "And I swear to you, Olivia, I didn't kill her. But if we stay here, we're both dead." A cold chill slithered down my spine. "What do you mean?" Ethan moved fast, down the stairs in seconds. "I mean, you don't understand what's happening. Emily's murder. It wasn't random. They found out about me. About us." I shook my head, backing away. "Who found out?" His jaw clenched. "The people I used to work for." A car screeched to a stop outside. Headlights flashed through the windows. Ethan grabbed my wrist. "We don't have time. If you don't trust me, fine. But trust this. I am the only thing keeping you alive right now." A door slammed. Then another. And then someone knocked. 3 sharp, deliberate knocks. Ethan's grip tightened. "It's them," I was out of time. I had two choices: stay and hope the police found me before whoever was outside did, or trust the man who had already lied to me for years. I did the only thing my instincts screamed at me to do. I ran. Ethan yanked open the back door, pulling me with him. We bolted into the night, my breath coming in short gasps as we tore across the yard. Behind us, I heard the front door burst open. Whoever was inside wasn't knocking anymore. Ethan shoved me toward the alley behind our house where a black SUV was parked. The back door was already open. "Get in," he ordered. I hesitated. A gunshot rang out. The bullet struck the wooden fence inches from my head. Splinters exploded. My breath hitched. Whoever was after Ethan wasn't interested in taking him alive. I dove into the car. Ethan jumped in after me, slamming the door just as the tires screeched against the pavement. The driver, a man in a dark hoodie, glanced at us through the rearview mirror. "You took long enough." Ethan exhaled sharply. "Drive, Marcus." My head snapped toward him. Marcus? The same name written in Ethan's notebook. The one who was supposed to explain everything. I turned to Ethan, my voice shaking. "Start talking. Now." He ran a hand through his messy hair, his leg bouncing anxiously. "I wanted to tell you the truth," he muttered. "I really did." I grabbed his arm, my voice sharp. "What truth?" He exhaled. Then he looked me dead in the eyes. "My name isn't Ethan Calloway, and I used to work for the people who just tried to kill us." The car sped through the dark streets, tires screeching as Marcus took sharp turns to shake off whoever was chasing us. My pulse pounded so loudly that I could barely hear my own thoughts. I stared at Ethan, or whoever he really was. "What do you mean you used to work for them? Who are they?" He wiped a hand down his face, glancing out the window like he expected another bullet to come flying through it. "It's complicated." I gritted my teeth. "Try me." Ethan inhaled sharply. "The people after us? They're not just criminals. They're part of an organization, one that doesn't officially exist." I scoffed. "You expect me to believe you were some kind of secret agent?" His jaw clenched. "Not an agent. An asset." Marcus cut in, his voice low and impatient. "Just tell her, Ethan. We don't have time for the slow reveal." Ethan hesitated, then turned back to me. "I was a fixer. A ghost. I handled problems for them. I made people disappear." A sick feeling settled in my stomach. "Disappear how?" He held my gaze. He didn't need to say it. I already knew. I shrank back. "You killed people?" His expression darkened. "I didn't have a choice." "That's what every murderer says." His face twisted. "You think I wanted this life? You think I chose to become a weapon?" Marcus let out a sharp breath. "Argue later. Right now, we need to get out of town." I ignored him. "So what changed? Why are they trying to kill you now?" Ethan hesitated. "Because I got out." Marcus made a sharp turn onto an empty highway. The city lights faded behind us, swallowed by the night. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "I walked away 5 years ago. Faked my death. Built a new life. A real life." He looked at me then, his voice quieter. "With you." Something twisted in my chest. "And Emily?" His face darkened. "That wasn't supposed to happen." I scoffed. "Oh, so accidentally having a second wife was just a mistake?" His jaw tightened. "She was part of my cover. I needed to stay hidden, and marrying her was the best way to do that at the time. But then I met you." I swallowed hard. "And what? You just decided to keep both of us?" I was going to tell you the truth. His voice was desperate now. "But then I found out she was dead, and I knew. They were coming for me." Marcus spoke up. "And now they're coming for her, too." A shiver ran down my spine. "Why?" Ethan turned to me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't place. "Regret? Guilt? Fear?" "Because they think you know too much." My breath caught. I don't know anything. They don't care, Marcus muttered. Loose ends are loose ends. I shook my head. Number no, this isn't happening. But it was. I was on the run with a man I didn't truly know, being hunted by killers I didn't understand. My entire life had been a lie. I turned back to Ethan. What do we do? His eyes met mine, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I saw something familiar. The man I thought I loved. The man who, for all his lies, still looked at me like I mattered. We survive, he said. The car sped into the night, carrying me further away from the life I thought I knew, and into the unknown. The highway stretched ahead, an endless ribbon of darkness. The only sound was the steady hum of the tires against the asphalt and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I stared out the window, my mind racing. Less than an hour ago, I was just another unsuspecting wife, living an ordinary life. Now, I was running for my life with a man I barely knew. Ethan, or whatever his real name was, hadn't said a word since his last confession. Marcus drove in silence, his grip tight on the wheel. Finally, I turned to Ethan, my voice barely above a whisper. Where are we going? There's a safe house, he said, his voice low. About 100 miles from here. No cameras, no records. We can lay low. I exhaled sharply. And then what? We just live like this? Always running? Ethan hesitated. I just need time to figure out who set me up. Emily's murder, it wasn't random. Someone wanted me to take the fall. I clenched my fists. You don't get it, do you? I don't care who set you up. I care that you lied to me for years. His jaw tightened. I was protecting you. I laughed bitterly. Protecting me? By marrying another woman? By dragging me into whatever this is? He rubbed his face, frustration evident. You were never supposed to be involved. Well, guess what? I snapped. Now I am. Marcus sighed. Both of you shut up. We have a bigger problem. I turned to him, dreading what he was about to say. They're tracking us. My stomach lurched. How? Could be a bug on the car, Marcus muttered, scanning the side mirrors. Could be your phone. I immediately pulled my phone out and stared at it like it had betrayed me. Then, without hesitation, I rolled down the window and threw it out into the night. Ethan smirked slightly. Smart. Shut up, I muttered. Marcus made a sharp right turn onto an unmarked road, tires skidding against loose gravel. We ditched the car here. We walk the rest of the way. I groaned. Walk? To where? Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he pulled off to the side and killed the engine. Out. Now. We climbed out into the freezing night. The silence was eerie. No headlights, no traffic. Just a long stretch of abandoned road surrounded by trees. Marcus grabbed a backpack from the trunk and slung it over his shoulder. Keep moving. If they're tracking us, they'll be here soon. I shivered as I walked between the two men, every step taking me further away from my old life. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to make Ethan pay for what he'd done. But something deep in my gut told me that the worst part of this nightmare was still coming. By the time we reached the safe house, an old abandoned hunting cabin tucked deep in the woods, I was exhausted. My legs ached, my lungs burned, and my mind was still trying to process everything. Marcus checked the perimeter, then gestured for us to go inside. The place was small and smelled of damp wood and dust, but at least it had a roof. Ethan sat on the couch, rubbing his temples. I stayed near the door, arms crossed. I need the full truth, I said finally. No more half answers, no more lies. Who are you really, Ethan? He hesitated. Then he exhaled slowly. My real name is Caleb Morgan. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Even his name was a lie. I was recruited into a covert organization when I was 20, he continued. They don't officially exist, but they work within governments, eliminating high-risk targets. For years, I did their dirty work. assassinations, intelligence operations, whatever they needed. I swallowed hard. And then I wanted out, so I faked my death, burned everything, started fresh. His gaze locked onto mine. Then I met you, and for the first time in my life, I wanted something real. My chest tightened. I wanted to believe him. But how could I? Marcus suddenly stiffened, hand going to his gun. What? Ethan asked. Marcus glanced at me. Did you tell anyone we were leaving town? I shook my head. His expression darkened. Then how did they find us? A loud crack echoed outside. Footsteps on dry leaves. Ethan shot to his feet. We're not alone. The next few seconds were a blur. Marcus grabbed his gun, moving toward the door. Ethan pulled me behind him, eyes scanning the cabin for an exit. The door burst open. 3 men stormed in, all dressed in black tactical gear, guns raised. Drop your weapons, one of them barked. Marcus didn't hesitate. He fired first, hitting one of them in the shoulder. The man crumpled with a grunt, but the others moved fast. One tackled Marcus, slamming him into the wall, while the third trained his gun on Ethan. Caleb Morgan. The man sneered. We finally found you. Ethan's hands curled into fists. Who sent you? The man smirked. You already know. And then he turned to me. Olivia, right? He asked, almost casually. My breath hitched. He tilted his head. You're lucky. We were supposed to kill you, but someone gave us other instructions. My stomach twisted. What do you mean? The man chuckled. You really don't know, do you? Ethan shifted beside me. Don't listen to him. But the man grinned wider, eyes locked onto mine. The person who sold you out? He pointed at Ethan. It was him. I felt the world tilt. No, I whispered. The man nodded. He made a deal. His freedom, for you. I turned to Ethan, my heart hammering. Tell me it's not true. Ethan clenched his jaw. He didn't answer, and that silence was all I needed. A sick, burning feeling spread through my chest. After everything, after all the running, the lies, he had betrayed me again. I had trusted him, and he had sold me out. And now, I was as good as dead. The cabin seemed to shrink around me. My ears rang. My breath came in sharp, shallow bursts. Ethan, Caleb, my husband, the man I had loved and trusted, had sold me out. I could barely process what the man in black had just said, but Ethan's silence was the loudest confirmation. I took a step back, my body trembling. Tell me he's lying. Ethan's face was a storm of unreadable emotions, but he didn't deny it. I did what I had to, he said finally, his voice rough. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. You had to. What exactly did you trade me for, Ethan? The man with the gun grinned. Oh, sweetheart, he made a very generous deal. He gets to walk away scot-free. In exchange, he gestured toward me with his pistol. You come with us. My stomach churned. Ethan, Caleb finally met my eyes. I didn't have a choice, Olivia. Marcus, still pinned against the wall by the other agent, spat blood onto the floor. Bullshit. There's always a choice. Ethan's hands curled into fists. If I hadn't made the deal, they would have killed both of us. I was trying to save you. I scoffed. By handing me over to a death squad? His face darkened. You don't understand. No, I snapped. I think I finally do. Ethan had spent our entire marriage lying to me. He had built his life on deception. Why had I thought this time would be different? The man with the gun sighed, checking his watch. Look, I love a good marital dispute, but we're on a schedule. You can cry about betrayal later. Right now, you're coming with us. I swallowed hard. And if I refuse? The man smiled. Oh, you will refuse. That's why we're going to make it easier. He turned the gun on Ethan and fired. The gunshot shattered the air. Ethan stumbled back, clutching his side. Blood seeped between his fingers as he let out a strangled gasp, dropping to one knee. I screamed. Ethan! He looked up at me, pain twisting his features, but his eyes weren't on me. They were on the gun. I followed his gaze. The man had lowered his weapon slightly. He hadn't aimed for a kill shot. Ethan was hurt, but not dead. And that's when I realized they wanted me alive. But they didn't need him. I had seconds to act. Before I could talk myself out of it, I lunged. I grabbed the metal poker from the fireplace and swung it as hard as I could. It cracked against the gunman's skull, sending him staggering forward with a grunt. His gun slipped from his grip. Ethan, despite the blood soaking his shirt, moved fast. He tackled the second man, elbowing him in the throat before ripping the gun from his hands. Marcus took his chance, slamming his captor's head into the wall so hard the wood splintered. Chaos erupted. I barely had time to think. I grabbed the fallen gun and pointed it at the man I had just attacked. My hands shook violently. The gunman held up his hands, groaning. "Easy, sweetheart. You don't want to do that." Ethan spun to me. "Olivia, give me the gun." I ignored him. My grip tightened. Everything inside me screamed to pull the trigger. To end this. To make him pay. "Olivia, please." I turned. Ethan was watching me, blood staining his lips. He wasn't begging for himself. He was begging for me. For whatever part of me still wanted to believe he wasn't a monster. My finger hovered over the trigger. Seconds stretched. Then a sound outside. Tires. More men were coming. Marcus cursed. "We have to go." Ethan grabbed my wrist. "Olivia, now." For the second time that night, I had a choice. To run or to fight. I exhaled sharply. And then I turned and ran. We burst through the back of the cabin, disappearing into the dark woods. Behind us, voices shouted orders. More gunshots rang out. Branches whipped against my skin, but I didn't stop. Ethan's grip on my wrist was firm, but weak. He was losing blood fast. I didn't care. I wasn't going to stop for him. We ran until my lungs burned, until my legs threatened to collapse beneath me. Somewhere behind us, Marcus fired his gun, covering our escape. The trees thinned. A car sat hidden near an abandoned dirt road. Marcus must have stashed it here earlier. Ethan stumbled, groaning in pain. I caught him, throwing his arm over my shoulder. Marcus appeared moments later, panting. "Get in." Ethan collapsed into the back seat. I slid in beside him, my hands still trembling. Marcus floored the gas. The car sped off, leaving the cabin and the bodies behind. For a long time, none of us spoke. Ethan's breathing was ragged. I pressed my hands to his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. He looked up at me. "Olivia." I didn't meet his gaze. Because I already knew. This wasn't over. Not even close. As the city lights appeared in the distance, my mind raced with one final question. Did I just save my husband? Or did I save the man who would betray me again? And this time, would I survive it?